You start your adventure in a tavern, the stereotypical beginning to any D&D campaign. But what happens when your party steps outside of that tavern? There's more to a starting location than just a building, and no one seems to be talking about that. Good news? I'm here to change that. Hello everyone, I am the Dungeon Engineer, and this is Fantasy Framework, the web series where we go over the step-by-step method for creating a D&D world and a campaign from scratch. We will be building on our ideas that we created in our last video, so make sure you give that a watch. The first impression that your players have of your game is its starting location. More than that, you will be able to use this prep to help your players during their character creation. If they know where, how, and why, it allows them to create characters more tailored to your world. For example, we're going to develop out our second location from our previous video. And let's give this place a name. We're going to call it Mithra. And for character creation purposes, we're going to have to be more specific than a plane or a kingdom. Let's choose a city. Let's choose the capital city of this plane. We're going to call it Nexus. And you can start naming these places, people, and concepts to help breathe life into your world. But we are still going for that illusion of complexity and intricacy. The pitfalls that people run into in this stage is diving too deep into their cities and starting to develop out like stormwater management facilities and plumbing and all that stuff. What we want is simple ideas that convey a lot about your location. So just like your unique setting trait for your overall world, you want to consider what makes this location stand out from the rest in your setting. In the previous video, I talked about how this place would be a center for portal travel. With that, I think that this place must be highly advanced and give off an almost Magitech vibe. Now that I've decided what makes this place stand out, let's develop out specific aspects of this location. I'm going to categorize these specific traits into two primary groups. The first one being external effects, and the second one being civilization fundamentals. Your external effects are going to be tied back to your unique setting trait. And I wrote down two subcategories for this. I wrote down the withering and portal travel. For fundamentals, we're going to need this for every location that we make. And I'm going to divide this into four subcategories. We got culture, economics, history, and government. I know this sounds tedious and boring right now, but please stay with me. It's a lot more easy and fun than it sounds. And to ensure that we keep it simple, we're going to limit ourselves to only writing 3 different things about each subcategory. And while we're writing this stuff, we want to keep in the back of our minds why and how our players are going to be starting at this location. But let's kick it off with portal travel. Let's say that this technology was obtained from an older civilization, and that this city invested a lot of their time and a lot of their money into researching this old technology to use once again. And another thing that we're going to add is a night force that originates from this city. This force is going to travel between different planes and maintain peace and order. More than just maintaining peace and order, they're also going to establish contacts between different planes that aren't already in contact with Nexus and Mithra. We can also say that these knights are the ones to discover that the withering has been affecting other planes. Thinking back to our player's role, I want to make them a part of this knight group. And instead of just calling them a knight group, we're going to actually give them a name. Let's go with Aetherclad. Let's define out that technology a little more, what allows people to travel between planes. Keystones are magically enhanced rocks that contain information pertaining to cultures and locations throughout the old world. Portal arches are magic conductors that harness the power of these keystones to open gateways to other planes. Before we get into the withering, I want to go touch on our fundamentals a little bit, starting off with our economics. With economics, you want to think about how your city supports itself, what resources they have, how do they obtain them, and how much they have. How do normal people here make their money? How do rich people here make their money? All stuff we will be considering. But for our example, let's say that Nexus has a lot of trade through travel. With the Aetherclad, they're able to establish interplanar trade routes. We're also going to say that even before Mithra discovered plane travel, it was teeming with natural resources. Sprawling farm fields and fertile land just outside the walls of the capital to support the large population of this plane, as well as deep coal mines that they use to power the technology of Nexus. Within Nexus, we can also say there's a planar market, a location in which all sorts of travelers or citizens can go to buy goods, mundane or luxury, from a variety of planes. Let's move on to our culture. For culture, you're thinking about religions and gods, and what does your city and its population value? What shapes their values and how do they show them? How do they display this physically? How do they display it socially? This is what we're keeping in mind when we talk about culture. And I'm going to give this plane 3 gods: a god of knowledge and remembrance, a god of home and preservation, and lastly, a god of progression and ingenuity. And let's give them all names. Those look good enough to me. Let's also add a couple of landmarks. One being a large central spire in which the government presides and does government things. We could also add the Aetherclad barracks as a landmark, being how important they are to the city. For this barracks, I'm thinking of something that stands out a lot and has a very imposing presence. The image that keeps on coming to my mind is like a Hall of Justice type of building. Education is going to be a big part of the culture in this city. So I'm thinking of large college campuses that almost take up entire districts of the city. And in order to even hold a job or be a part of the labor force, you must have some sort of college education. A bit of a ridiculous standard, but you'll understand why I made that decision once we get into the government. Speaking of government, what type of government does your city have? How do the people react to this government? Is the government effective? Does it get things done? Is the government stable? Or are we in a time of revolution? Let's go back to our example. I'm thinking that the general population would be pretty content with the government here. There hasn't been much hardship for the people in Nexus, though they haven't had much reason to rebel or have any dissatisfaction. I'm thinking that Nexus will have an oligarchic government, and this group that rules over Nexus will be the most academically accomplished people within all of Mithra. And I'm going to give them a very basic name. I'm going to call them like the High Council. The guiding principle of Nexus is if only the most intelligent people are making decisions, then the city will head in the right direction quickly without the pesky slowness of democracy. Next, let's talk about history. Now, I like to split history into 3 different parts with a sneaky optional 4th, and that is current events, recent history, ancient history, and if you want, lost history. Current events is anything that's actively affecting the world now. Let's say that the withering has caused refugees to start pouring into Nexus, and thus has become the main concern of the capital. For our recent history, we're going to put in the discovery of portal travel. We're going to say that recent history is stuff that happened within the last 500 years. Or if you want to put it into fantasy terms, anything that an elf could be living to. For ancient history, we're going to think thousands of years ago. Here we're going to put the founding of Nexus. The founders of the capital were a group of philosophers and scientists. They sought to form an almost utopian society that prioritized innovation and progress. For our lost history, we're going to think tens of thousands of years ago. For that, let's think about the ancient civilization from which the technology for portal travel came from. These people valued culture above everything. So they made grand temples with magical artifacts that had encoded on them all sorts of informations about different cultures and locations that the civilization ran into from the old world, the one before the fracture. And thus is the origin of the keystones that are used within portal travel for Nexus. Finally, let's touch on the withering. One big way that the withering affects Nexus is, of course, the refugees. These refugees, they talk about the withering, and they say that it causes their world's colors to fade and their plant life to die. The skies become blotted out, and then shortly after, the actual Earth begins unraveling and crumpling. None of the planes right now are sure how or why the withering has started. They only know that it is worsening and it is spreading. Thus, Nexus has turned all of its resources into researching and stopping the withering. The research program for this is called Operation Bloom. That sounds like a lot, I know, but when I'm looking over my notes and looking through everything that I read, it is a little bit over a page, and I wrote it in bullet points. If you didn't write it in bullet points, it would easily take up maybe half a page. And without much work, we have a fleshed out location to give our players, and with anything they ask, we can reasonably flesh out more based off this foundation. But this is a starting location after all, so how do we want our players to start? And my going principle is I like to start my players right before action begins for them. So if the party is Aetherclad, I want to start the campaign right before they leave for a mission. I also want to tailor this campaign for lower level characters, so let's make the mission they're leaving for their first mission. Now that we have everything written out, I'm going to put it all together to form a cohesive location for our players. Nexus is the thriving hub for portal travel through the vast web of pocket dimensions. A bustling city that has a blend of all sorts of cultures throughout the fray. They seek to expand their knowledge and connections and continuously aim to contact new dimensions every day. And the people at the forefront of that mission are the Aetherclad, a prestigious group of knights trained within the highest ranks of Nexus. The city was the first to use keystones found in ancient temples within the old ruins of Mithra. Stones that are magically enhanced with detailed information on various cultures and locations that existed in the old world. With that information, the scientists of Nexus assembled portal arches that could track the remnants of that culture and locate that pocket dimension. Once interplanar contact was made, that's when they discovered the withering. Destroyed and crumbling civilizations, Nexus extended a hand to take in refugees from the planes that have started the withering. Now they turn to Operation Bloom to put an end to the withering that has taken so many planes. In our next video, we will better define our player's role within the starting location, as well as go through the process of character creation from the DM's perspective. But hey, if you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, leave a comment, and I'll see you in the next one.